One of the sources of your data might be from a cloud computing source, or you're storing it in a database that's in the cloud. So we need to understand the concept of cloud computing. So we talk about cloud computing. You might think about Google Cloud, you might think about Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Service. Cloud computing allows access to computing power that is stored somewhere else. So as we get bigger and bigger data sets, we need more computing power. We used to have big computers that you would log in remotely at universities, right? And no longer do we need that. We now have server farms that are run by different companies like Amazon and Microsoft and Google that allow us to remotely access that computing power. It also allows us access to remote data storage. So we can keep all that information, all those tables, all those lines of information, and we can store it in the cloud. So we're storing it on a server that is owned by Amazon or Microsoft or Google Cloud. So this allows for this information then to be accessible from lots of different locations. If we think about Amazon Web Service, for example, the reason Amazon Web Service exists is because when Amazon built their warehouses for you to order all kinds of things, what they needed is an inventory management system, something that would keep track of all the different items they have, what warehouse it's located in, how much they have available, also they can fill your orders. Well, this means that they needed a large database that needed to be stored somewhere, and it needed to be accessible by all the different warehouses. So they built a server farm. They built a lot of computers in a single location that all of these warehouses, and then essentially you, when you log into their website, are all accessing. And what happened is they had some excess space left over on those servers, on those computers. And so then they started to rent it out to others, which is what has become Amazon Web Service. And so many learning management systems, maybe in your program using something like Blackboard, when you upload your course assignments to Blackboard, it's being stored on Amazon Web Service. So these cloud computing places allow for remote storage of data. It also allows us then to utilize their computing power that they have built into all these computers and these server farms in order to do the analysis remotely as well. And so we can connect data that is stored in the cloud using relational databases. And so we use like MySQL. And then it can also store unstructured data. So recall in our previous videos, we talked about unstructured data. This would be documents, images, audio recordings are more unstructured. They can't be put into a table. And so you use NoSQL, or not only SQL is what it stands for, to access and analyze unstructured data. In these videos, we're going to look at MySQL, which allows us to connect data that is stored in table form. So these are relational databases. We'll use MySQL for that. When it comes to cloud computing, there are different types, different forms of cloud computing. So as an organization, you can decide what you want to purchase in terms of cloud computing should you choose to use it. So you might choose to have infrastructure as a service, IaaS, and this is where the cloud computing provides you that data storage and some data visualization, so helping to summarize the information. You're essentially renting computing power, so it's doing some analysis for you, and that's what you see with Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Service, and we're going to do this with Google Cloud. Alternatively, you could have Platform as a Service, PaaS, and this is where you run your own web-based app. So you are renting the hardware and the software from the cloud computing service. And so if you think about Google App Engine, so if you want to create your own Android app, you are renting the hardware and the software in order to do that. The whole software that you've constructed is within their system, is housed within the cloud computing, and so allows you to run your web-based apps for that. In comparison, we have Software as a Service, SaaS, and this is where we link the software to a database, And if you're an organization, you're essentially renting the software. So Salesforce is a customer relationship management software. SAP does enterprise resource planning. Cisco WebEx, Concur, these are all examples of software as a service. So let's look at Concur, for example. Concur is what your travel agent would use to track what is happening in terms of flights and costs. It also helps with billing of customers or organizations for their travel needs. So it is software linked to a database of flight and travel information, a database of customer information, and they're essentially, you're renting the software. So if you're a travel agency, you would rent Concur as the software, which is all stored in the cloud. The last type in terms of cloud computing is function as a service. And this is where you are designing application logic. And so you're renting out the deployment. So if you think about Amazon Alexa and you want the capability of, for example, asking Amazon Alexa to make some purchases and order for you from Amazon and then have it delivered. So it's the entire application and it is turning that into action. And so that is, they're renting out the actual deployment of these models that are built. So you can get different things from your cloud computing. And we're really going to focus here on this infrastructure as a service, the storage and visualization, because our focus really here is on if we're using cloud computing as a database or we have a system, maybe we have online purchases that are happening. Our website is doing e-commerce, is selling and collecting information. So we're pulling in information into the database. We have inventory that is stored in the cloud. Then we're storing our information and we need to be able to pull that out in order to do some analysis. Whereas if you go into more computer programming, then you start to look at the function as a service, the platform as a service, in those realms. For us, for data analytics, we're going to look at infrastructure as a service. So why use cloud computing? Why have your data stored in the cloud? So one is scalability that allows you to collect a large amount of data. So if you think about your organization, you probably started out with a spreadsheet, just tracking day-to-day operations, people involved in your organization. Maybe you're tracking your inventory, your connections, your customers, depending on what your organization does. Well, now we're looking at scaling that up. What if we have multiple locations for our organization? Now we have lots more people. Now we need to have remote access to this information, not just one person's spreadsheet on their computer. And so having it in the cloud allows us to scale it to a lot more data. It also allows us to take advantage of economies of scale in terms of savings. So we don't have to have our own server that we're remotely logging into by all the workers within our company, right? More and more people are using Microsoft 365 or with SharePoint to go and share those tables, those data sets. And then you can do that with Amazon Web Services. You can do that with Google Cloud. We can allow multiple people to have access to the data without having to build the infrastructure ourselves. So savings for the organization. And then the third is security, data protection. So this allows for an offsite backup. So it's not just one spreadsheet on someone's computer that might crash. The place that it's being stored might have a fire, might get destroyed. So offsite backups. And these organizations also offer things like two-factor authentication. And so the idea is that you're preventing access from hackers or from those who might do your organization harm. And then if we are looking at infrastructure as a service, then we're using that computing ability to analyze the data. And so a lot of these organizations have dashboards that are tied to it to provide you with those business insights. In our videos, we're going to look at how you can build your own dashboards without these organizations. just so you kind of understand what a dashboard is, how it works, and if you want to build your own. But you might, as an organization, want to use Microsoft Power BI, which is tied to Azure. And so if your data is in Azure, it then allows for Power BI based dashboards. And Google, Amazon Web Service also have abilities to do data visualization and dashboards as well. So we're looking at summarizing the data and showing it visually to help us have business insights. What can our organization glean from this information? How can it change the way that we operate?